Professor or Teachalicious? Which do you
Oh
prefer?
my heavens. You can just call me Chris, that's fine.
I'll try. I'll try. I'll try. Oh man, I just want to say I discovered your page like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago, and I have been learning so much.
Oh,
So much.
cool.
I've been like, because like I go over charts and graphs and everything, and I'm always trying to cover economic material every day. And then yours is like a gold mine. It's like I'm holding on to like carbon isotopes, and you're like freaking uranium, and I'm like, whoa.
Oh my goodness, that's very kind.
So yeah, guys, okay, so we got 55 people on my side. Guys, follow Christopher Clarke. He's an economist, he's an economics professor. Whatever I know like a drop in the ocean, and he knows the ocean. So just follow him. He will teach you stuff. He's taught me a bunch of stuff. I deep dive, I deep dive, I was deep diving your I was deep diving your silent depression thing, and I
Yeah,
couldn't
that's a
agree with
hot
you
topic
more.
right now. Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't agree. I can't believe that freaking video, like that those guys, that average Joe, that circulated so much.
I know, I know. I've given so much reflection to it because it's been about 2 months now, right? And it's not just on TikTok, like it's spilled over into Twitter. There was even it's there's an even a media article on the local news station in
Mhm.
Denver. And I was a little upset because I'm like, didn't these journalists ask an economist? They did. They asked an economist from UC Boulder, and you could tell this guy just phoned it in. Like he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, yeah. If you control for inflation, that's what it is. But we're still better off today. And like he just phoned it in. Like he didn't even like think about what he was saying at all. So
Are you by a laptop right now?
yeah, I'm in my office at work here. It's a
Okay.
lot. I'm on
Do
West Coast here, so
oh,
it's
you're
a
in the
lot
West
earlier
Coast.
in the evening. Yeah,
Do me a favor. Just go on to Google
yeah.
and search average.
Oh, I saw your video. Yeah, let's see. Let's see if it works.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I just saw your video you posted. So average income
33.
1930. 1930.
1933.
So not
No,
average
it's
income
it,
1933. This
it's
is
average wage for the American worker, 1933.
that's very specific.
Yeah, I know. It's something though.
I'm trying to do it with as least amount as possible. So when I type in average wage for the American 1933, your number's 6 or 7. Now I'll
Okay.
say American worker, and you're number 3 when I do average wage for the American worker 1933.
Okay. All right. I was number one earlier, but yeah, that's crazy.
Well, not
It's
everyone's Google results are the same. I mean, there's location and
yes.
search history and lots of things that affect everyone has
It's
different
still
Google
pretty
results.
cool though. But like
Yeah, it is.
at least that broke through. I'm glad that broke through, because like I just can't believe how many people you like on my like whenever I do like economic commentary, I get so much
Yeah,
criticism. Oh no, we're in a depression now. It's so much worse. And I'm like,
I
no,
know.
that was
No, it's
BS.
tough. It's tough. And, we have to be sympathetic. There's a real reason why these things are going viral.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
resonating with their emotions. It's validating their difficult experiences. And when someone's struggling,
Yeah.
like they don't care
Yeah.
if your statistical results say something. They
Yep.
just want to hear that they're struggling or
Yeah.
that life isn't fair or the economy's not treating them how according
It's
to how
not
much work they're putting into it.
the economy is not helping the regular American. It's true. Like,
Yeah.
see, I've
Yeah.
been saying that we're in a recession, like we're in a silent recession, maybe. Like, I know the stock market's doing great, and yes, we haven't had a set, like any quarters of GDP contraction. I get that. I know the official
Uh,
name for a recession, but like there's such a disparity between the markets and what the average American worker is going through. The
sure.
the
Yeah.
minimum wage is still 7.25 an hour, so it's been almost 20 years since it was raised. And your
Yeah, that was I
solution,
think 2009, 2007 was the last time it was raised at the
that's
federal level.
yeah, but like your solution that we need to build more houses, couldn't I? Oh my God, I couldn't agree more. We need to build more houses. I think we do need like, I think we need like addiction recovery centers. Like we need them more than we need charging stations. I think that's one thing, you
That's
know,
interesting. I
because
mean,
it's,
charging stations are necessary for us to switch to electric, and switching to
I
electric
know,
is going to reduce. It's not just for climate issues, but it
no,
reduces the local pollutants.
you're right.
And we're just learning more and more that local pollution is pretty terrible. It's
But
worse than we thought it was.
just think of what just think of what drug addiction though is doing to millions of American families all over the
Yeah.
country. But what we should do
Yeah.
both. Honestly, we should do
Yeah.
both.
Well, on those two policy, public good provisions,
Yeah.
we have the resources to provide
Yes.
both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but like also see, tell me if you think I'm a little crazy. I get it if you
Okay.
don't. But I think we need to increase the minimum wage. Like we need to like, in 1950 we doubled it. And I don't know if we can double it, but we need like when we doubled it in 1950, there was so much conservative argument. The Chamber of Commerce even like
Yeah.
spoke against the
Yeah.
president because they're like, oh no, it'll destroy the economy. And what the hell? We had an economic resurgence.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so if you adjust for inflation, well, I guess first the good news is lots of cities and states have been raising minimum wage.
Yes.
So
Yes.
the federal minimum wage is 7.25, but
I
only
know.
about half the states are doing that, and
Yeah.
even some of the cities within those states have higher ones. So
Sure.
I'm in the state of Washington. We have the highest one in the nation. I think we just hit. Oh, it's kind of a decimal
Fourteen,
number. It's like
15.
1475 or
Yeah.
1484 or something. Yeah, and they've
So
actually indexed it. It's going to be permanently indexed now.
I that that's
So how
okay.
high how high could we go? We could go if you adjust for inflation, the highest minimum wage we've had in history was in the 1960s, and that
Mhm.
would be the equivalent of about $11 to $12 today.
Yeah.
So we could
Really?
do that easily. Yes.
So okay, so tell me where I'm wrong because I've I've read that if we match the minimum wage the way we did from like 1950, and we did that up until like what the mid 70s, then
Yeah.
the minimum wage would be like almost $20 an hour.
Okay. Yeah, I do know where that's coming from.
Yeah.
So that's coming from. They're trying to match up. There's a chart out there that traces productivity, so
Mhm.
output per working hour
Yeah.
versus compensation per working hour, and there's that split, right? It's a very famous
Yeah.
chart. There's a split,
I've
and
seen that
that's
one. Yeah.
that chart's okay, but there are some criticisms of it. I think
Sure.
the biggest criticism of it is the output in that chart because this is a historical chart. You have to adjust for inflation.
Yes.
Output is adjusted via like GDP, the GDP deflator,
Yeah.
whereas the wage is adjusted by CPI. And the CPI and the GDP deflator are different. And if you use the same
Mhm.
price index, that gap is no longer as strong. And there's a
Um,
very active debate on the best way to do this. I don't think I'm not one to say that chart's like debunked. I think there's a lot of useful things in that chart to say. But even if we measure by lots of different ways, there isn't a question that workers are receiving a smaller share of the total income than they used to be. Now that
yeah.
didn't start in the 70s. That started at around 2000. So it's about we've
Mhm.
had about 20 years of that.
Yeah.
So again, we've never had a federal minimum wage. Again, in today's dollars, higher than $12 or $13 an hour.
Okay.
So if we went higher than that, science doesn't tell us what's going to happen. We do know, like, no one thinks we should have a minimum wage of $50 an hour.
Of course.
We think
Yeah.
the market distortions would be extraordinary, and it would probably
Yeah.
cause a lot more harm than good.
Yes.
But the question is, how high can we go
Yeah.
without experiencing these negative things?
Well, so that's interesting. So I have a quick. I tried this, but I don't remember. I don't remember the exact number I had. What if I took like, let's say I made a chart of the CPI and then the federal minimum wage, like the raisings of the federal minimum wage, and if I drew
Yeah,
a trend line to kind of
yeah,
match the federal minimum wage to the CPI, would I
yeah,
get like
yeah.
11, $12 an hour?
That if, like I said, the highest point it was, I forget what year, but it was in the 60s, and um, I have to think because we've had inflation since the last time I looked this up.
Yeah.
But it'd be in the ballpark between 11 and 13 an hour.
So, because that makes sense. Like I know. Yeah, like no one really makes. I think there's maybe like less than 1% of the working population makes the federal minimum wage. I get that.
Today,
And
yeah,
I
today.
know there are good
Yeah.
states like, yeah, Washington, California. I think even like Illinois, New Jersey, New York. I just think like if we even set the minimum wage to like $10 an hour, the federal minimum wage, then
Yeah.
I still think that would elevate so many people because if you're not paying someone the federal minimum wage, what is that a crime? That's a crime, right?
Yeah, we would categorize that as wage theft.
There you go. So I just that I think that's something that would help so much, like increasing the federal
Yeah.
minimum wage and home construction, because first building homes creates jobs. Like, duh,
Well, sure, it does.
creates
It
jobs.
increases the jobs in the construction
And it
sector.
drops the price
Uh,
of rent. It drops the price of houses, and then not just that, freaking money's floating around the economy again.
well,
Like,
and yeah, and the other thing is when people don't have to pay so much of their income on rent, they can pay it on other things. So they'll increase their demand for other goods and
yes,
services.
it
Yeah.
furthers consumption. So
Yeah.
like you're a busy man, so I wouldn't expect you or anyone like a true professional to watch like my posts unless like maybe one or two. Um, I have been for about almost a year more concerned about heading in a deflationary direction rather than
Interesting.
hyperinflation that everyone's been talking about.
Okay.
And just because like, well, one thing is I never trust what everyone's saying. If everyone is saying hyperinflation or inflation, and I'm like, yeah, I know inflation's a concern, fine. And so I just start looking up like, what about the opposite? Because I always think that like the Fed, banks, they're always interested in doing a Kansas City shuffle. Call me crazy. Kansas City
What's a
shuffle
Kansas
means
City shop? I don't know what that is. What's that?
you look left and they go right. They're tricking you
Okay.
to look left and they go right.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Because like about 6 months ago, I started noticing that the Chinese, the price production index was in deflation. The Chinese PPI is in deflation, right? And I
It
was
is
like,
right. It is right now. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
4 point something percent. And I was like, if this
Yeah.
thing keeps heading this way, it's gonna hit the overall consumer market, and it just did. Now the Chinese CPI has actually dropped. It's down.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
negative 0.2% deflation. It's
So in
very
this
low.
case, the cause would be a slowdown in demand.
Yes.
When you shrink demand, you're going to have less people wanting to buy stuff, so
Yep.
prices drop.
Youth
Now
unemployment.
PPI can bounce around. PPI can
Yes.
go negative 20% in
Yes.
one year and then positive 20% the next year.
100%. But
Um,
if it trends
but the
downward long term,
CPI, no,
yeah.
exactly. If it's kind of a long term trend rather than a short term kind of thing,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
totally.
India has had negative PPI for a couple years. And I know the EU I think they just broke into negative PPI, not CPI, CPI.
Okay,
And it's like
yeah.
America was heading there, and then I think it was last quarter, they just went up. And
Oh, okay.
and the thing is, I don't think we're going to go into deflation. I don't think there's anything like
Not
I don't
anytime soon.
no. No, because I think if we start heading in that direction, I think the Fed would just print money, lower rates, right? Because
Yeah.
like deflation is,
So
but
we could have had this in 2009. We in fact we did have
yes,
deflation. I think for
yes,
about 6 months or 8 months in 2009.
yes,
But yeah, we fought that. The Fed fought that hard.
yeah,
I think the Fed should get a lot of credit for
yes,
like we could have had another 1930s in
yes,
the 2010s could
yeah,
have been worse or just as bad as the
yeah,
1930s, and it wasn't. It was
yeah.
bad, but it wasn't that bad.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, I remember even reading that. It
Yeah.
was like that was actually the quantitative easing was a good thing. Personally, I think more money should have gone to like swindled homeowners than banks. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. So the money that went to banks were loans.
yeah, I
No
know,
one
and
gave
they
the
paid it
banks
back.
free
They paid
cash,
it
and then
back.
they paid it back with interest.
Yeah.
The government made money off of it, mostly. I
Yes.
mean, depends on how we do the accounting. If you start taking into account risk and fair market value of risk, then the government lost some money on it. But we're talking a few billion rather than the
Yeah.
trillions that were lent
Of
out.
course.
Um, but anyways, to your point, the bailouts to mainstream in 2009 through 12 was pittance of what it needed to be. There was not enough
No.
for the people who lost their homes.
Yep.
I mean, the mortgage crisis lasted for years. I don't think
Yeah.
home prices bottomed out till 2011.
Yeah. Like even in 2014, and that's when I was like starting
Yeah.
to get really into economics. like everyone, my professors were still like, yeah, we're not recovered. We're recovering, but it's a very slow and
Yeah,
stagnant
it was a
recovery.
very slow recovery. Yep.
It was.
So they learned their lesson with COVID. When
Yeah.
COVID came around, of course, that was just a decade ago, so it was very fresh. The
Yeah.
quality of the stimulus response for COVID was pretty good, pretty
I
extraordinary
think so.
by historical
Yeah.
standards.
And
Yeah.
what's crazy, what I found so interesting is like even though we were printing money like crazy and interest rates were like what zero, that the DXY, like the strength of the dollar skyrocketed.
Oh, yeah, yeah. What's a
You know,
safe
it's like
asset?
yeah,
It's
like
because it's safe.
during the Great Recession, we printed money, but like the DXY, the strength of the dollar was in the 70s. It was
Yeah,
really
yeah.
weak, and so I was like I was very surprised, but yeah, I think long story short though, I think like I always have my eye out for deflation, but
Interesting.
I think the Fed would have a very they would like literally have a bazooka. They would be like, oh no, yeah, like we're gonna make the
Yeah.
economy nice and fertile, everything's gonna be fine. Hey, are you surprised that interest rates went up to not that inflation went up 50 basis points?
Uh, no, things bounce around a lot.
Yeah,
And gas went up by 10% last month.
yeah,
So you know, things that's one of the reasons we measure core inflation versus the headline.
yeah.
Headline's the most important in terms of because it measures our cost of living, and you want to index things to the headline
Right.
inflation. But if you want to know like underlying inflation that doesn't bounce around from month to month so much, that's why
Core
you
inflation.
strip out we strip out food and energy, and core inflation fell again last
Yeah.
month.
Okay.
So
So
yeah,
I didn't look at core. I just looked at overall. I have to, it's funny. I just got this app. It's called TradingView, and it's
oh,
actually the one I'm using now. They're giving me a free membership where like it's like a $60 membership. I get it for
yeah,
free,
yeah.
and I'm just trying to put all the metrics onto this account, and I forgot to put core inflation.
Oh,
I just have
so
I
yeah,
have
I mean,
these
core
accounts.
inflation, yeah, it just helps us predict the future
Yeah.
better than headline inflation does because these all these numbers bounce around from month to month. So I mean, you'll get a new jobs report and it might be a little higher, it might be a little lower. What's better is to do like a 3 month average, like a 3 month moving average or a 6 month moving average, or
Yeah.
in addition to like the 12-month figure. So
That makes sense. Are you
yeah.
I haven't listened to your immigration series, but like do
Oh,
you
okay.
think that but I want to. I just haven't had time. I have three kids.
Sure.
I have three kids at
Oh,
the
I've
same
got
time,
two.
dad.
So there you
Yeah.
go.
Oh, yeah, you got two. I saw. You have a boy and a girl, right?
No, two boys. They're both
Oh, you
boys,
have two
but the
boys.
the
Sorry.
blonde has long hair. Yeah.
Got it. I just saw the boy and yeah, I saw long hair. So I was like, oh, it's a girl.
Yeah.
I was also listening to voices too, because I had I was driving listening to like your playlists.
Oh my goodness.
You're a great educator. I love your information.
Thank you
And
kindly.
oh hell, where the hell was I going? We were talking about inflation. Oh no, where was
Immigration. Immigration.
immigration? Yeah, thank you. I feel
Yeah.
I feel like our poor immigration policy is also what's contributing to inflation. Like we don't have like food is like millions of pounds of food are rotting on the vine because like
Okay.
Florida, Alabama, I don't know about California, but like the southern conservative states where we grow so much of our food, they have just become especially Florida, they become so unfriendly towards immigrant
Yeah.
workers. Like DeSantis passed that like a bunch of anti-migrant work laws.
Right.
Okay, great.
Right.
Which means they either don't have enough workers, and the workers that they do hire, they're Americans, so they're like a third as productive as the immigrants. So it's like, yeah, our food is getting so much more expensive for
So
that reason.
I'm not 100. I haven't seen enough like serious,
Yes,
studies, representative
you're right.
type samples work on the
Yeah,
most recent anti-immigration effects
yes.
on harvesting or farm productivity. So I don't know. I mean, I've seen a lot of anecdotes and like these kind of viral video things, but these aren't careful studies that have tried to look at the issue or try to survey farmers and see, what do other farmers saying on these issues. So I'm not
I,
sure.
I haven't
Uh,
looked at data sets. You're right. I've only been paying
mm,
attention to like news articles from like farming lobbies that are like that they're
right,
trying to get
right.
The
And I
Trump
mean,
administration.
headlines are a good thing to get you started because I mean,
Yes,
someone's talking about
but
it,
it's not
but
a data set.
right, you don't know if that's really what's the primary cause. So, but I can say this, and this is more of a long-term thing, is
Mhm.
more immigration in general increases entrepreneurship.
Yes.
It increases our productive capacity. When we
Yep.
have a higher workforce, we
Yep.
can produce more stuff. And if
Yes.
we can produce more stuff, then that's a rightward shift in the supply curve, which puts
Yeah.
downward pressure on prices. But this is kind of a slow thing. Like this is something over the course of years or even decades.
Well,
So
but this is
there's a
the
graph that looks at inventor
yeah.
immigration, and the U.S. between 2000 and 2010 brought in. I'm trying to put it in like in numbers here.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So you have a graph. Everyone looks like this, all the
Yeah.
countries, and then the U.S. is like this. Like that's the secret to the
Yeah.
U.S.'s success is we bring in
Yes.
the best and the brightest
Yes.
from all over the world.
Yes.
My worry is that the past 10 years we haven't been doing that as much because we've been so
Yeah.
much more hostile.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and my worry, especially for the next 10 years, I'm pretty disappointed with the current administration. I was
Oh
hoping
yeah.
Biden would be much more pro-immigrant, but he's not.
No. No. It's like what is it like? Did we what normally we bring in maybe 1.4 or 1.5 million immigrants, but I think we're getting like 1.2 or 1.1. There's like a drop,
Yes,
in the amount of immigrants we're getting, and that's America's secret sauce is our
it
immigrants.
is, and we have this H-1B visa for people with graduate degrees, and it's a lottery. Like we run out of them by April every year. So,
Really?
like, we could double the amount of people with graduate degrees immigrating into the country. And I think no matter what people's opinions are about low skilled workers and the competition there,
Yeah.
like, there is nothing better for long run American growth than it bringing the best and the brightest from
Yeah,
across the world here.
exactly. Not just best and brightest. I'm fine with low skilled workers. Like
Yeah.
they keep the population numbers up. It's a good labor supply. They're 80% more likely. I don't have the this like I've seen several articles, but I don't know the source. But the common saying is 80% more likely to open a business than an
Yeah.
American.
Yeah. No, the entrepreneurship is a huge component.
Yeah,
And
statistically
no,
more likely.
it's not how we should be doing things.
Yeah, but like
So there is a counter argument. Some people do worry about brain drain in other
yes.
countries. And surprisingly, when we study this, if we're doing this with France and a
Mhm.
whole bunch of French are coming here,
Mhm.
I think France would be experiencing a brain drain.
Yes.
So for example, South Africa might be experiencing a brain drain. Uh, but if you look at a country like India, because we have a lot of Indian migrants coming to
Sure.
the U.S. or the Philippines, what it does is it creates more opportunities locally. So
Yeah.
now they know that they can go there. There's also more the money that goes back. There's more transfers that go back
Remittances.
home, remittances. But then the third component, I was really surprised to read this recently, is more people become educated. So let's say the particular paper we looked at that I was reading looked at the Philippines, and they studied nurses. So we imported a lot of nurses. A lot of nurses immigrated
Yeah.
here to the U.S. from the Philippines, and it turned out that there were more and more nursing schools and more people were educated in the Philippines and stayed in the Philippines. So the quality of the healthcare system was higher educated because of this kind of infrastructure, social infrastructure they built
Yes.
up, and institutions around higher quality nursing schools.
Also in India, the same thing has been happening in India for almost 20 years. It's like, they come here, they're like programmers, developers, CEOs, bankers, and they have built so many different like mini Silicon Valleys in India where like
Yes,
they're not
yes,
even trying to come to America. Some of them are
yeah,
happy to stay there. And that's
yeah.
such a great thing. It's such a
And then
symbiotic.
another thing that happens is some people will stay here for a while, be successful, and then they'll go home and
Yes.
help build institutions there. So it helps
Yes.
spread and
Yes.
disseminate knowledge across the
Yes.
world.
Yes.
So again, there are some studies that do find like a negative brain drain effect, but it's usually like one developed country to another developed country.
Yes.
But the studies we're looking at for India or Philippines, that those are two recently I've seen, it
Yeah.
was a net positive for
Such a
for the
such an
sending
equal
country.
benefit. So why do
Yeah.
you think so like that article I was mentioning or the couple articles, but one in particular mentioned that we have been tightening our immigration policies since 9/11 actually.
Okay.
Since
Okay.
2001. And it's
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
like turning the screws for decades. And then
Yeah.
Trump it really just amped up with the anti-immigration
Yeah.
policy, and it's continuing to this day. And like, I'm curious, why do you think Biden is not as welcoming to immigrants as we all expected? Because I literally,
Yeah.
sorry,
I don't know. I have the same question. And of course it's kind of political speculation.
yes,
Um, but I mean, the article I was reading this morning was talking about New York City, and of
mhm,
course they're a sanctuary city, so they're receiving a lot of these migrants. But because of their legal status of these migrants, the limbo that they're in, they
mhm,
cannot get any work, and so the only way for them to live there is via social safety nets. So the
yeah,
city of New York is paying their living expenses, food and shelter, and all of this. But this is becoming unsustainable from the perspective of the mayor. And sure, New York is an incredibly wealthy city. I mean, it's the 13th
yeah.
largest economy in the world just by itself. But,
Holy crap! I didn't know it was that. New York City
the
is
13th
like,
largest economy in the world. Yeah, yeah.
I know
It's
Russia is the
huge.
12th. Russia's the 12th, so New York
It's the
City.
same size as Russia's economy. Yeah, yeah.
And Russia has $70 trillion of natural resources, so holy
Yeah.
crap.
So I mean,
Wow.
this goes to show that economic output is not the same thing as natural resources,
Yeah.
or not the same thing
Yes.
as capital even. But it's a lot of
Yes.
human capital, a lot of
Yes.
services and stuff that are valuable.
Yeah.
So, but the solutions in the commentary is if Biden would simply like speed up the process for these work visas,
Yeah.
or maybe it's not a visa. I forget the legal term for it.
Same.
But if he would speed up the process to allow these migrants to be able to work in New York, that would alleviate the budget pressure on the city of New York, and they would work and they would produce stuff, and like that's the whole end goal.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
they'd be productive and they
Yeah.
contribute, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. The what the articles are saying is that Biden is like reluctant of the criticism against it, but I think the current stance is not good. I'm not sure on like national polls, like the sentiments on
Yeah.
immigration. My sense, like most things, it's fairly 50-50 in the country.
Yes.
So his lack of willingness to be very pro-immigrant is a political puzzle to me. I'm not
Yeah.
sure because
Same. Same.
the economic discipline 80% of us, I mean, about 20% of us, like Borjas and stuff, have find results that immigrants can harm certain sectors of the economy. But 80% of the papers out there find a net benefit for immigration, even unskilled or low income immigrants.
I mean, I, I'm sure. Look, just like I mean, there's nothing that's always 100% net positive, but I think maybe, yeah, immigrants who are put in a place where they have no opportunity, of course you're going to have a net negative. Like if they can't work, sure,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
But I have to say this, like I'm fairly, I have trouble. Like I don't like to categorize myself on the political spectrum. Like I am very very pro immigrant. But I will say I do like the fact that New York has been spinning such a pro-immigrant game, like, oh, immigrants deserve this, they deserve that, they deserve that. Oh my gosh, Texas, California, they should treat their immigrants better. And then New York gets the immigrants and like, someone has to do something about these immigrants.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
No,
like,
I'm completely sympathetic to Mayor Adams' position there. That
yeah,
this is a national issue. I
it is.
think every state should absorb the migrants coming
Yes,
in trying to seek a better life.
100%.
Um, Now, this is long run. This is good for New York City. 20 years from now, New York City is going to be way better off because of
Oh yeah.
this.
Yep. Healthy labor supply.
You know,
Well, but let's see. What's the population of Manhattan right now? Like that, like just or New York City? Was it like 12 million? Some crazy.
something like that. Manhattan's less than that, but the broader New York City area, yeah,
So
we're getting to 12 to 16 million. Yeah.
and are all the immigrants being just kept in Manhattan or all around the city?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Because like let's say if the city, like if the
It's
pop,
cheaper in the other boroughs, so I would hope so for
yeah,
efficiency purposes.
because like I'm just thinking that is pretty crazy. What, it's been a year and the city just had an extra like 1 or 2% growth.
Yeah.
That is a lot. That's
Yeah.
like it's like the city does have to like find a way to integrate an extra 2% of the population into like the workforce, school systems,
Uh,
residencies. Like, hey, maybe who knows? Maybe the immigrants in New York will like spur more construction. Maybe I don't. I mean,
Sure. I think one of the biggest
What do you
inhibitants
think, guys?
too for New York, rents are incredibly expensive there, and in part that's a policy choice.
Yes.
It's the regulatory environment in New York City is just extraordinarily difficult to
It's
build.
so prohibitive. It's
It
so
is.
prohibitive in New York City. It's because nobody talks about this, and it's really crazy. Everyone talks about how evil pharma, which I agree, and the oil companies, fine, energy, sure, but no one talks about real estate. Like the
Yeah.
corruption in real estate, like New York real estate, that's some of the most expensive real estate in the world. You don't think there are like billionaire lobbyists who are like ensuring that
Yeah.
construction is slowed or that zoning laws are so prohibitive. It's like, come on. Your examples of Houston are so on the nose because look, okay, Houston has some of the cheapest rents. It's growing very quickly. Oh, and
Yeah.
what's the one thing? Great. Okay, low zoning laws. Not a lot of
Very
obstruction.
limited. There's some, but it's limited. It's
Yeah.
and in fact, I have a worry. So I used to live in Houston. I've been in Washington here for a year and a half now, but I lived in Houston for about 4 or 5 years. And
It's
there's some
changing.
zoning laws, and
Sure.
price rents are going up, and it won't it you can't keep it perfect forever.
Sure.
They'll need to make some changes to make that happen.
Where are you from, if I may ask?
I grew up in Las Vegas.
Oh, I love Las Vegas. I love I, I'm not just because of the strippers. I mean, that's a huge part, but it's also because you can fire guns there. Like, I only,
Huh?
well, I
Uh,
only went there. I just mean the only, okay, the first and only time I ever fired an AK-47 was in Las Vegas
did you go out in the desert with friends, or like at a
at a
thing,
shooting
like
range.
at a
It,
shooting range?
it was
I
the
see.
first gun I ever fired in my life.
I so Nevada is 85% owned by the federal government because that's just how it is. And so the nice thing about this BLM land is recreational shooting is totally legal. So growing up, I we went out into the desert and shot lots of AK-47s with like my rich friend's dad who owned all these guns, and we'd go shoot guns out in the desert.
And that was just the thing. Like I screamed every time I fired it. Every time I was like,
Yeah, it is a thrill.
I mean, it was fun. I felt it was. Well, no, what's funny is like, so I did my little meeps every time I was firing the AK-47. And then 5 minutes later, I see this girl, must be like 110 pounds, took the same AK-47 and was just practicing like nothing. 110 pounds,
Oh, so
just
she had figured out, yeah, yeah,
oh yeah.
yeah.
I was, and then she moved on to like I don't know, like a 50 caliber. Like it was a mounted gun.
Okay.
And,
Wow.
and I was about 10 feet away from her, and every time she fired, I was going like,
Oh my goodness.
it's so loud. I wasn't used to it. But anyway, I love Vegas, and I love the life there. I love I've never lived there. I've only visited there, and I'm sure I'm just thinking of the fun
The,
times.
the
But like,
tourist stuff on the strip, yeah. No, when you grow up in Vegas, it's you live in suburbia. And the nice thing is it's a very young city.
yeah,
And so it's very integrated. That was one of
yeah,
the shocking things when I moved to Houston
yeah,
is like even though technical segregation ended in the, 70s and the
yeah,
80s with the redlining, like the neighborhoods are still very, very segregated in
yeah,
Houston. Like you have
yeah.
this chunk that's an African American chunk. This is the Hispanic triangle. These are the Asian pockets. Like it's very, very segregated still. And I mean, that was the first time I really took in the idea that discriminatory housing laws
Yeah.
and practices by banks from 40, 50 years ago
Yeah.
have a huge influence on where we're heading to today and the current thing today. Even though technically we've been free to move wherever we want, you know, people don't move every year. Some people live in their house for 20 years. There's some
Yeah.
people, they only went to schools in those neighborhoods, so then their
That's
education opportunities weren't well. And this generational link to wealth was really
generations.
quite shocking. Yeah,
That's the thing. What you said another just great thing. It's like this affects generations. These policies affect everyone within a generation. And it's
yeah,
not like you could put as much legislation as you want. The impact is already there.
sure. Well, I mean, I always believe there's room to fix things and room to
Oh
make
no, no,
things
no. I
better,
don't think
and you could
anything's
break it.
irreparable. It just takes time. It's not
It
like it'll
does.
happen tomorrow or even in a year. It can take half a generation or a full
Yeah.
generation or more. And it's like policy decisions, big policy decisions, they do take a long time to reverse course.
Yeah, yeah,
That's,
yeah.
you know, I mean,
But you want to see what's in the comments?
oh yes, you're right. Sorry, I got so caught up. Okay. All right. Redlining is
It's
still a thing in real estate. We kind of covered that. Okay. Someone asks, if I may ask the first one. Someone asks, do you think inflation is at 10%?
No, I think it's the number that came out today.
Yeah,
Three point,
3.7.
3 point. I've already forgotten it. I taught it in my class this morning.
3.7%.
3.7. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, there are many different measures of inflation out there. And to be clear, these are the average prices for the average household compared to 12 months ago.
Yeah.
Now, many people's situation are different. Maybe they buy more gas than the average person. In that case, your inflation rate would be a little higher because gas prices are going up. Or on the other hand, you might be someone who's had a mortgage for 20 years, and so you're paying your mortgage rate from when you bought the house 20 years ago when housing was cheaper. So you're not experiencing very severe
Yeah.
recession, very
Yeah.
severe inflation.
Yeah.
So,
Have you heard of the Trueflation Index?
no, not by that name.
It's uh,
Trueflation.
it's Trueflation. I think it's like 50,000 data points or something like that, and they're suggesting that inflation is lower. I like to look at it. I don't swear by it. I try to
I've
have as
never heard
many.
of it. I don't know anything about it. I'm looking it up now.
Trueflation,
Oh, so they're
Trueflation.
saying 2.6.
Yeah.
Ah, interesting.
And when we were at 9% inflation, according to
Yeah.
the Fed last year, they said we were at like 12.7.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so I like it's to me that's always like, okay. I felt like inflation, I don't know, like like me and a couple of people were like, we think inflation's higher than like 9%. And then like a month ago, I find out about the Trueflation Index. I'm like, that's kind of cool. All right, that kind of supported like what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But
Hey, average
it's funny
undergrad.
though. What was that? Oh, sorry.
Average undergrad. I was just saying
And
hi.
you go ahead now. Now you answer whatever what questions
Yeah,
you
so
want to.
Trueflation, I'll have to look into it. Because I'm constantly looking for. I mean, there's so many of the prices are on the internet that technically could be publicly available. And there's another project called the Billion Price Project. He's
Ooh,
by
let
it's
me just
by
get a pen. I want to write that. Okay. All right. I have a marker,
Billion
but my
Prices
daughter will.
Project. Now
Billion
there Billion Prices Project,
prices.
and he does it internationally, not just for the U.S.
Wonderful.
And Alberto Cavallo is the guy. He's I think a professor at I think Harvard, an econ professor there, and similar goes out collects publicly available information on for prices and uses the same methodologies as the BLS to calculate inflation and compares his with the others. And of course, it's very rigorous. And he's been doing this for over 10 years. Now, he doesn't like keep an updated thing. I guess he's made it proprietary so he can make money off of it or something. I don't know. But he's published a number of papers on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best private or, independent gathering of prices that I've seen. And, it's finding across the world government statistical agencies generally do quality work. The one
Yes.
exception he found, of course, was Argentina. Argentina
Oh.
fired everybody in their statistical office, and then he found that probably all they did is they still collected their inflation data, but then they divided it by three. So the official inflation was one third of the actual inflation
Oh
of
my
Argentina.
God.
And this was, but these are the years like 2007 through 2013 is when his paper was looking at it. Of course, Argentina's situation today with 100% inflation is just
Yeah.
wild.
But
But anyway, so Trueflation, I'm going to have to check this out.
yeah, but so Argentina, they had I think it was in the 90s, they had like 20,000%
Yeah,
inflation at one point. I mean,
yeah,
it's like it's crazy because I still remember reading about Argentina, like like when I would read old well, not old, but like from the books from the 20s and 30s, they talked about Buenos Aires like they were talking about Paris, and I did a little
yeah.
deep dive on Argentina, and like around that time, even before World War One, they were one of the top 10, I think, GDPs or like something like
They were doing really well before 100 years ago. Yeah,
yeah,
kind of. Yeah,
and
they
then
were doing quite
just
well.
like so. What do you like? My theory is that they just have they allow like too much instability. I mean, like it looks like if things start to get stable, then you have less leftists who are like, "Oh my gosh, there's too much austerity, there's too much of this. We need to nationalize everything." And that scares away foreign investment, and of course it leads to like reckless spending, and then like poor monetary policy, and and then then it's like this wash rinse repeat. Then they get like, I guess, more economic liberals to come into office, and then the cycle kind of continues. Does that
I it's um
I don't have
I'm
your
not I'm
expertise,
not
so I
sure.
want
Yeah,
to.
I'm not sure how much we could blame it on populists or
Yeah,
people who nationalize or don't nationalize. I don't know on that one.
yeah,
But in general, there's a lack of transparency and accountability, and
yeah.
the
It's
private
corrupt.
and public institutions are not. Because I mean, I was chatting with a guy who's from Argentina, and he was another economist, and I said, "Oh, your macroeconomy is not so hot." He said, "Yeah, I know." But he says that even their private banks, like people don't deposit their money in private banks because the private banks in the past have stolen money from their clients and
Yeah,
not gotten
because of
prosecuted for it.
corruption.
So
Like,
you can't function that way. It's
yeah.
impossible.
Like, and how do you think? I feel like, I'm worried about Lebanon for the same reasons. Like, how will people ever trust the Lebanese banks again
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
like their dollars lose 98% of value? Like, how do you trust your government again? Like,
Yeah.
unless you have a stronger economy, like step in. But I mean, I don't know. That's never going to happen. Like, how do you come back from that?
I mean, lots of countries can make that leap. I mean, South Korea was a poor country in 1960 under a
Okay,
dictator.
yeah, okay,
Taiwan is a developed country now, or
sure,
because of that. Singapore and Hong Kong are tremendous success stories. Um, Poland right now,
yeah.
Poland over the
Poland's
past
doing
20
well.
years is
Yeah,
just
yeah,
it sticks out. I
yeah.
think Poland has had the second highest growth rate after China over the
Yeah,
past 20 years.
yeah,
So Poland is coming from a lower middle country to becoming a high income country. And well, so what did Poland do? Well, Poland joined the EU.
yeah.
Poland adopted the similar institutions.
Well,
Um,
so you're right. Poland had that. They have a lot of geographic benefit for Europe. They have a strong military. There is a lot of room for growth for Europe to invest in Poland.
yeah,
Now Lebanon is they're not getting into any EU.
right,
That's what I mean. I don't
right,
know. I
right.
don't know what Lebanon can offer other governments as an incentive to invest in them. Like, I would love to see a Middle Eastern version of the EU. That would make me happy.
Well, sure. I mean, I think they'd have to. I think there's a lot of
I know there's a lot of like
military
NATO that wants
conflicts
it.
or
Sorry, what was that?
difficulties that there's a
Yeah,
lot of military conflicts that would.
yeah. I know. I'm saying it would be nice. It's like a
Yeah.
nice to have. But I thought it was so cool that the African Union got into the G20.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
that's
I
a
didn't know
good.
that.
That Yeah, they like, it was just announced like a week ago, and it's like, I'm actually a big fan. Like, okay, I'm kind of a fan of the coup that took place in Niger and Gabon for the simple reason that the French have been exploiting these
Well,
countries,
there is
and
that.
of course Mali, Burkina Faso. So, did you know, like, France pretty much has 14 former African colonies where they granted them independence in 1961,
Right.
because they knew they weren't going to be able to keep them. So, but what they did with, like, I think 8 of these 14 countries is they keep half of their currency reserves in French banks. They issue these countries their own
Mm.
currency, like France's, like a Central African franc. You know,
Oh, I see. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, now there's one article that they're saying that said that France takes about 85% of each of these countries' national income, but I can't back that up.
I
But
don't
what
know
I
anything
do
about
know
it.
is
Yeah.
in the colonial pact is that these countries still have to send soldiers to France if France ever goes to war. And they can't make alliances without France's approval.
Oh, wow.
And France gets the first right to buy any of the natural resources that they discover on their own.
Oh
So,
no.
uranium
This
gets like
ain't. This isn't good. Yeah.
1 gram of uranium, I believe, costs
Oh.
about, I don't know, $500 or $400. France is paying about 80 cents to a dollar.
Oh no. So
So I'm
is
like,
that how France is that how they're funding their nuclear energy
yeah,
inside of
that's
France?
it. They're the
Okay,
largest nuclear producer in Europe of nuclear power, and so
they are, but I didn't realize that it was the reason they could afford it is because of their colonial
most likely.
institution.
And Niger was one of their three largest uranium importers, or yeah, exporters.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm kind of like good. I'm like great. Get the French out. I mean, I don't like the fact that there's probably a lot of Russian and Wagner influence. I don't like that. But it's like France has slept on and exploited. Not just that.
Um,
Oh, this is what gets me. Okay, France has been making these countries pay for the infrastructure that the French built like over 100 years ago that they haven't maintained.
oh no.
So I'm like, get the French out. Get the French out. They are a cancer in Africa.
Oh, that's
I
terrible.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like I am happy that the Chinese are building infrastructure in Africa. I know there's a lot of predatory lending going on,
Well,
and that's what I mean.
that's the idea. Is they're just as being colonial and predatory with
Sure,
their loans as well. I mean,
you're right.
I'm not a huge expert on the Belt and Road Initiative. I mean, I read a little about the Sri
Yeah,
Lankan crisis, and
yeah.
part of that was
They
blamed
seize
on the
ports. They
Chinese
take in
loans.
ports.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. They built
But
these empty ports. You
but
know.
but but my thing is it's industry and factories and bridges and roads. And it's like, I know it's Chinese owned, but that is so much better than just giving money because money can be siphoned off, diverted to all these other corrupt politicians. You can't do that with a road. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it just,
yeah,
I think it's a
yeah.
better form of exploitation than at least what France is doing. I don't know about the other countries so much, but
Sure.
I think China is a healthier option for the Francophone African countries than France.
Oh, interesting.
You know, and I know like the Chinese their interest rates are higher on the loans, so it's almost like they're setting up these countries to not
Yeah,
be able.
yeah.
But my thing is
So
okay.
what's your opinion on like a World Bank loan for these projects? Because
Like
they also
IMF.
give these development kind of projects as well.
Well, how come like China has built so much more infrastructure than the IMF in like let's say Burkina Faso or
But you
Mali?
say you mean the World? I thought the IMF didn't do
Sorry,
development loans. You meant the World Bank and the World
yeah,
Bank. I
World
mean
Bank.
they're like sister institutions.
Yes,
So yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
No,
like
I
I
don't know.
know,
I don't know.
and
That's
I
a good
know
question.
The World Bank forgives. They forgive a lot of debt. They've
They
forgiven
do. Yeah,
billions.
they try to restructure things.
But
I
it's
mean,
like,
there's been. I've read William Easterly's book. He's of course the most famous critic of the World Bank. Now he's done a bunch of books.
let
I
me just
read
write down his name, William Easterly.
William Easterly. The book I read was I just forgot it. The Elusive Quest for Growth. But he wrote another one called The White Man's Burden. I think that one became a little more famous. But in his Elusive Quest for Growth, and the book's probably 15 plus years old by now. William Easterly's still around. You can follow him on the internets and stuff. But his big critique was not one of we should abolish the World Bank or these things,
Yeah.
but that the funneling off of these loans before they actually get to the project is just incredibly inefficient.
Yes,
Incredibly inefficient.
that's it. Funneling,
Yeah.
it's the funneling of the loans. So why not just build? Instead of giving money, build. That's what China does both. China does both. They
Right.
give money and they build.
Yeah.
And I mean, but the thing is, here's my this, and I have no evidence to suggest this. So this is purely from my own demented brain.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
So all right, let's say these African nations they can't afford to pay for these massive infrastructure projects, and China, like seizes ownership of like bridges and all these things. What's to stop, certain Western interested parties from funding and arming freedom fighters to take this infrastructure back?
Oh, this is an interesting hypothetical.
You know, because it's like
I don't
really,
know. Yeah.
it's
I don't
like
know.
okay, so like yeah, China, great, you're gonna build these things, and now you think you can just take ports and everything. It's like really, you think you could do that in these places? No, I like maybe you could do that to like closer neighbors, but you can't do that all the way across the Indian Ocean.
Right. 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 Right.
It
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be more of a win-win for these African nations than anyone else. And like I'm just a fan of I'm a fan of everyone exploiting Africa getting kicked out. I know it may not be a realistic notion, but it's like let Africans build Africa and let the West and China and any other interest let them come to the African nations as equal trading partners instead of parasites.
Yeah, no, it has to be consensual, it has to be
Yeah.
equal. So you do need international development loans, low interest
Yes.
loans. You do need foreign direct investment. So you do need rich
Yeah.
international corporations bringing in,
Sure.
building up businesses, building up things in there. But all the terms have to be, negotiated in an equal bargaining position. And this is, of course, so FDI, foreign direct investment, has been criticized a lot,
Yeah.
but I don't see any success without it. So we talk
Yeah.
about South Korea, right?
Yes.
South Korea had a lot of FDI into the country.
Yes.
So you can't do it without it, but certainly foreign direct investment can get problematic.
Of course it can, because yeah, too much influence
Yeah.
from the investor. Oh, I just want to. So here's. Can I just tell you something, Professor Clark? I
Yeah.
I get. I'm either criticized for being like an ultra right wing conservative or a bleeding heart liberal.
Oh
So
my heavens.
someone just called me. Someone, his name is King Mellon, just said, "Let Africans build Africa, but you want China." I'm like, "Duh, no, I don't want China. I just want infrastructure built. I just think China's a better option than France. I don't like. I get that so
Right,
much.
right,
They're like,
right, right. Yeah.
I get so many comments calling me a traitor for like, and I'm
Oh
like, what?
dear. Oh my goodness.
I'm like, I'm a fan of America. I think America has a lot to work on, but I'm a fan. Like I think a lot of great things come from this country, and I think this country helps a lot of people manifest greatness within themselves, you know? I mean, like but I think we're at a point where we need to start organizing like we did in like the 1890s, the 1920s, the 1930s, you know, just
Oh, which
to
aspect? Which aspect? Because lots of bad things were happening then, bad then too.
well, I just think that the when I talk about the progressive movement, I'm really talking about like unions, workers' rights,
Oh, so
and I
in
think
that context, sure. So the growth of the labor movement we experienced in the progressive era. Yeah,
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 thank you. Okay, that's a much better way.
yeah,
I
yeah.
approve
No,
of
I'm a
Professor
big.
Clark's statement, and
There are issues with the progressive era. It
sure,
was incredibly racist. So it's
yeah,
quite fascinating. The degree of racism
yes,
subsided 1860s, 1870s. There
right,
was a big push, for more egalitarianism. I mean, the
yeah,
constitutional amendment
yeah,
gave black men the right to vote, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, and the Reconstruction era.
yeah,
But kind of as a consequence of Darwinism, but not Darwin himself, to my understanding at least,
yeah.
uh, the eugenic movement got a real rise in the progressive era. So if you look
Oh,
at
yes.
Teddy Roosevelt was a huge racist. He
Helen
was very
Keller,
progressive, and white
yeah,
supremacy was part of his agenda. He thought that was the
yeah,
progressive thing to do, and it was most intellectuals at the time were held some sort of eugenic
yes.
views.
Helen Keller.
Oh,
Helen Keller was a eugenicist. This
I
was
didn't know
I double checked
that.
it. I'm like, no. And my sister is legally blind. So she really like, and when I say legally blind, she has like 5% of her vision left. So like, of course, she looked up to Helen Keller, and I was like, is she really? And then my sister, she showed me. I was like, oh god, you
Yeah,
know,
it's hard to have any heroes between
yeah,
1880 and 1940. Uh, it's
yeah,
not a great time.
yeah.
it
It's true. I
because that
stopped researching. I really stopped researching. You know, like oh, okay. So I don't know if you're a fan of Karl Marx. I'm not, and
okay.
it's not even because like I read Das Kapital when I was like 20 years old. So I've
Oh, you read the whole
forgotten.
thing.
It took
Well,
me
the volume
months.
one. You read volume one of it.
Yeah.
The
Well, no,
thick
no, no.
book.
It was about like what 700 something pages.
Yeah, I think that's
That's volume one. Yeah, probably volume one.
I think that's just volume one. Yeah.
Yeah. So then that was, and I don't honestly like I remember very little. I wasn't convinced, but it took, and I did it because everyone else thought it was really really like okay, this will really get it into your head, and I don't have a copy on me. I should probably, you know what? I've been criticizing.
It's
Yeah, that's
tiny. It's a little. This is volume one and two, so it's not even
okay.
volume three. But
But
so
anyway, like
I haven't read the whole thing. I mean, I read a lot of the secondary literature, but I've only read like a few chapters here of the
when
source
I was
material.
13, when I was 13, I read the Bible just because it just seemed like, I don't know. I was kind of a sheltered guy when I was younger, and I can hyperfixate.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
Okay.
um, like that's one of the like I pretty much. I'll tell you a little bit. Like I went from being like really horrible at math until I was 29, and then I kind of just went from like third grade math. Like I just did like hundreds of third grade math exercises, and then fourth grade and fifth grade up to eighth grade, and then I finally got to understand algebra, and I went back to school, and I graduated as a I got I ended up getting like magna cum laude as a mathematics major, you
Oh
know.
my gosh.
Yeah,
As in your 30s then.
in my 30s, and I hyperfixate. I can really boom, like I
Oh,
would
that's
do
really neat.
thousands. I would
Yeah.
do thousands of math problems until I got it, you know. And I wasn't even like that good. It's not like I was a math whiz. I did tutor math for like 10 years. I had my own business doing it, but like so I have that, which allows me to read boring books. Like I read War and Peace in like a few weeks, and people were like, "How did you do
You
that?"
did in a few weeks.
Yes.
I've read four Dostoevsky novels. I've yet to done Tolstoy, so it's on my list though. It's like a family tradition. We would do these long road trips in the winter, and there's
Yeah.
nothing like a long road trip better for a long road trip than a Russian novel. Like it's the mood is right in the winter.
Yes.
It's just perfect.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting distracted. I want to talk about Karl Marx. The main reason
Yeah.
why I hate Karl Marx is because
Okay.
he was such a bad father. He was such a terrible father. Like, like I've covered like a lot of his biography. Like, so first he was very smart. I mean, he was a brilliant guy. He was a great
I think he's a
communicator.
genius. Yeah, I think he's a
Yes.
genius. I think that's safe to say. Yeah.
Yeah, safe to say, easy and a skilled communicator. Like he
Mm.
had power with his words, with his written word, with his spoken word. And first when he went to university, he nearly bankrupted his father because he kept gambling, drinking,
Yeah.
and he was a compulsive shopper. That's and he was always broke. He came from a wealthy Jewish family, and he was always broke. And I'm
No,
like,
yeah, it was Engels who financed his life. Yeah. Yeah.
later, later. But
Yeah. Yeah.
Marx married, what was her name? Henrietta or Maria something. I forget her last name. I'm so sorry. I feel bad. Helga. I forgot her name. Nice lady.
Uh,
She came from
Johnny
a
von
well,
West, Jenny
Jenny
von
West.
Westhamen.
There you go. Jenny West von something. She was Prussian
Westhamen.
nobility. Prussian
Oh, okay.
nobility. Poorhouse. Always they were always on the verge of the poorhouse. So he ended up getting like patronized a lot by Engels, who was just a
Yeah.
millionaire playboy living off of his father's wealth. You
Well,
know,
and he owned a factory there. That's what's I never understood about Engels is I understand his revolutionary writing and where he's
yeah,
coming from, but both Marx and Engels' personal lifestyle was extremely bourgeois.
yes.
And like I'm kind of a fan. I'm a much stronger fan of Rosa Luxemburg because she's the real deal.
Let me write
Like
her down. Her name down, Rosa. I don't even
Rosa
know who she
Luxemburg.
is.
Okay, so
Rosa.
she's yeah. Mark's write his book. He's not terribly famous,
Yeah,
but the book gets out, and
yeah,
people start. Other economists start working with it, developing it. So
sure.
she's a socialist economist, which
Mhm.
is fascinating because she's a woman in a period where there's
Yeah,
relatively few female
yeah.
economists. And I'm trying to remember where she's from. She wasn't from Austria, but
Was she from
she
Luxembourg?
well, all right, the
I'm being
last name.
silly. I'm being silly. I'm being silly.
She's either from Germany or Poland or something. I can't
Yeah.
remember. Um, or Czechoslovakia even. I can't remember. Anyways, so
She
she
texted
gets
me
into
from Germany.
France.
Germany. Someone said
Huh?
she's from Germany.
She's originally from Germany. That's right. But I know she spent time in
Yeah.
like Switzerland and Austria for a while, and she had to like sneak into it and like pretend to be baptized. Like it was this whole ordeal. Um,
Yeah.
but she becomes a revolutionary, and she's the real deal. And so she's not just a revolutionary in the sense to bring power to the workers, but she's an economic theorist. And to have both of those talents in one, I've got a lot of respect for that. Oh, this
Is she
person
a
saying it's
communist?
Poland.
Oh,
Oh
Poland.
yeah,
Okay.
no, she's a communist, and she's fighting for these communist parties. World War One happens, it ends, and the kind of the center left party gets into power in Germany, and they're the ones who can murder her. They go out and they
Um,
murder her. So it's she's a martyr. I think she's a martyr for the working class. I mean, whether or not you agree with her technical analysis or whatnot, I think her life is really impressive.
I can't say anything about her. I have to read. I have to read her.
She's born in
Because
Poland,
like
so okay, yeah, she's born in
so
Poland.
I'll read about her, and because again, I'm not sold on Engels or Marx, just because
Yeah.
like I find it very, I find it
So outside of his personal moral failings, which many people have personal moral failings, what about his economics though? What about his theory?
you know, I agree. I agree that yeah, like the labor theory of value, perfect. Like the labor that you are doing is worth more than you are getting paid. I
Okay.
agree. I agree because that's how profit works, right?
Interesting. I've thoughts on it, but go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. Well, so at least that's what I'm hoping, right? Like, if you are a possessor of capital and you are hiring workers, the work that they are doing is greater than what you are paying them for. Like if
But
fifteen
this is
dollars an
also
hour.
this is okay. Okay.
At
So
least
no,
that's what I'm understanding. Marx said, and I can
okay.
understand that. You
All right.
know.
All right. So where are you disagreeing with him?
Well, I disagree with the notion that profit is exploitation. Like too much
Okay.
profit is exploitation. So of course, you need regulation. Like,
Oh, okay.
you definitely need the regulation of capital. I mean, that's just my opinion. Do you disagree? What do you think?
Okay. So well, on the 2 points, that's kind of
And be as brutal as you want. I have thick
yeah, yeah,
skin,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
any
yeah.
criticism you have, I'll learn.
So there are certain like moral arguments of labor theory of value that I think
Yeah,
are attractive.
yeah,
Um, but when we come to the mechanics of a market,
yeah.
the labor theory of value came out of favor with the marginal revolution, as we call it.
Okay,
So 1870s,
okay.
a bunch of economists.
Marshall, right?
This is Marshall comes. He wrote it early enough, but he actually doesn't publish his book till 1890. So he doesn't
Okay.
get counted as the as the. I'm being kind of technical here. So you have Walras in France, you had Jevons in England, and you had Menger in Austria. They're kind of the three, but there were like dozens. Like
Yeah,
everyone's kind of doing it, and that's when they kind of realized. And Marshall kind of helps put the whole system together. That's why his book is so
yeah.
famous. There's where's the red one? There it is right there. There's
I
Marshall's book,
see.
the red one right there. Anyway, he gets the most famous because he puts it all together. And the idea is in a perfectly competitive market, and that's the key assumption, which is not always true, especially in labor markets,
Of
but
course.
in a competitive market, the wage is going to be equal to the marginal product of labor. And the
Okay.
rental rate of capital is going to be equal to the marginal productivity of capital. And
Okay.
under that framework, um, profits are going to be competed if it's competitive. Profits are going to be competed down to zero, and because everybody, what I should be more clear here. Profits are going to be competed down to what we call economic profits will be zero, or another
Yeah.
way of phrasing it is profits are just normal. Like everybody's
Yeah.
earning enough to eat. They're
Yeah.
being compensated for their risk,
Yes.
but no one's earning like extraordinary profits.
Sure.
Um, so in that case, workers get their due according to their productivity, and labor gets, capital gets their due according to their productivity.
So that's
So this
Marshall,
might,
though, right?
yeah, this is by the
Yeah.
time we get to Marshall. And so the pushback to that is not so much in the framework of getting paid on the margin, but the pushback is, well, a lot of these markets aren't perfectly competitive. And so I think the best to do it in kind of this Marshallian neoclassical framework would be Joan Robinson in the 30s when Joan Robinson, she gets more credit I think for the labor side, but Ed Chamberlain in America, both of them published a book in 1933 talking about monopolistic competition
Yes.
or the idea that workers are getting paid less than their productivity.
Mhm.
So once you have the Joan Robinson framework where there's not enough competition. Like firms don't have to compete for workers. That workers are getting paid less in their productivity. We no longer like the Marxian mathematical equations get super cumbersome by that point. And it's just we can get a similar way of describing the market with a lot more clarity once we use marginal analysis and a monopsony kind of model.
Okay, so but I'm sorry, like
Did I lose you?
yeah, well, and it's you didn't lose me. Like yeah, I agree, but like I feel like maybe I didn't state my point clearly enough about Marx. I just
Okay.
think that I don't think that all profit is exploitation. That's just my thing. I think it can lead to exploitation. That was all I'm trying to say. Is like one of the reasons why I
Okay.
disagree
Okay.
with what I like what I still recall reading about Marx or what I skim over is that there is not like there's never going to it is very rare to have like a perfect distribution of profit and able to like give labor a good way of life. But I think that there can be some kind of middle ground where labor gets to enjoy a good quality of life, and the owners of capital can also still profit and then
Oh,
build
sure.
more of what that's all
Sure.
I think. I think that's
Yeah,
possible.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I think it's possible. I think I have faith in it, and I have faith in the people. I have faith in the people to be able to organize and actively like campaign to make sure that like corporate interests don't exploit
Sure.
the worker too much.
Sure.
That's all.
Sure.
That's what I believe.
Yeah. No, I
But
think I think history has shown us. I mean, you can go back to I think it's the 1819 Peterloo massacre in Manchester, England. There has been violent struggles for labor rights for so long. I
yes,
have a very difficult time believing that labor markets are inherently competitive, all on their own.
I agree.
I think we need there's experiments and there's different ways to do it. Should we do it through unions? I mean, Norway seems to do it, and Norway's inventing stuff. And
Yes,
everybody's unionized there.
yeah.
So, the Nordic model seems to be a pretty good model for unionizing everybody, but still creating and fostering innovation.
But they're
But you don't
homogenous
necessarily
too.
have to unionize everybody. I mean, the U.S. never had full unionization penetration, but we had a tremendous success.
Yes,
So labor laws, OSHA protection laws,
yeah,
workers' compensation, Social Security, just a robust safety net.
yes.
Um,
Well,
so,
maybe
I
we
mean,
need. Sorry, I
no,
interrupted you. I'm sorry.
I
Okay,
was about to transition, so go ahead.
so maybe we need something more than unions. Maybe there needs to be an evolved form of unions because it's true. Like unions worked 100 years ago, and now they lost a lot of their collective bargaining power because capital is able to outsource labor. They're able to like build factories elsewhere and all that. But I do think like that the consumers need another block, or not the workers need a block of protection that that that's not just our government because corporations can influence our government.
I mean, it's all about political power, however
Yeah.
that it's achieved. I'm pretty agnostic, or at least I just don't know enough to say this is the best route. And in part because lots of countries have had success using lots of different
I don't
routes
know
to get
enough
this.
either,
Yeah,
man. Like you're the
yeah.
expert, so like I don't. I'm just egotistical and I'm very cocky, so I'm like, this is a solution. Yeah, just listen to me. Geo for president, like I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I just because it's I just feel like the only reason why I even said what I said is like, okay, once unions started losing a lot of their power in like the 70s and 80s, especially with Reagan, like I think Reagan was like the death knell of a lot of workers' rights. He started it at least. And like just with the air traffic controllers and all that awful stuff, I think like okay, so then the American worker loses a lot of their rights, a lot of their power, and then we start to see pensions diminishing and or even over the past 20 years, I mean wages are rising. Okay, but like you like I think you even talked about that famous productivity and wage gap and uh,
So,
I
well,
just
the decline in unions has a number of causes. Certainly, there's some influence on Reagan and Thatcher, but
sure.
I think one of the other big causes has been just changes in kind of job composition. So we hire less people in manufacturing than we did before. So traditionally
Yes.
unionized sectors
or
just
like
aren't that big
larger.
anymore.
Yeah.
So there's that. I think that's probably one of the biggest causes, and then other sectors have not unionized. So
So can you clarify?
that
So you think like since we started switching from a manufacturing economy to more like white collar and service sector, you think that kind of
that
harmed
has
a lot of
contributed to a lot of it. Yeah,
I
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I
that
think
that
that's one
makes
of
sense.
the biggest causes to it. Yeah.
As our economy evolved, since we weren't like I guess we were less export driven. So that's let me write that down. Okay, so like
So
yeah.
this, I'm trying to think of a paper that I read that argued this. Oh, no, I can't. Not off the top of my head. Sorry.
It's okay. You know what? I gotta go in like 2 minutes.
Okay.
Actually, in like a minute.
So Geo Hooser, what am I supposed to call you?
You call me Geo Husar. I okay. So let me tell you.
Geo Hooser. What's the name? What's the name? Geo Hooser.
Geo Husar. Well, Geo means Earth, and Husar they were mounted. You see that
I
portrait up
see your
there?
icon. Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
me. It's as a Husar, and because like pretty much, it's a joke. I have a deep admiration for the Polish Hussars who stopped the Ottoman invasion in Vienna in 1682. It
Wow.
was
Okay.
yeah, I forgot the name of the sultan, but he made it, he made it all the way up to the gates of Vienna, and he was sieging the city for months. And he had sappers from like Hungary and all over the world trying to dig under the walls of Vienna because the walls were very thick. They were hard to bring down. And Jan Sobieski, the king of Poland, with an alliance of the Prussians, the French, and the Austrian, like yeah, fellow Austrians, they all launched a counterattack to break the siege. And it was because and they had Jan Sobieski leading them. He was the king of Poland because he
Yeah.
defeated the Sultan 4 times out of 5 times earlier. Like
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So and the reason why is because he had these hussars, and these hussars, they're horses, right? They're horsemen. Now the
Okay.
horsemen had these two poles with eagle feathers attached to them. So when these horses charged, the feathers would make this like kind of noise. And these horses were trained from like when they were cubs to handle that noise, but the enemy's horses weren't. So when the Polish hussars would charge into like enemy cavalry lines, the horses on the enemy side would go crazy because
Oh
they didn't
wow.
know that. Yeah, and so like just there was the hussars had so many crazy tricks, and anyway, they pretty much what happened was I think they had the Prussians and the French, their spearmen were like clearing a little opening in the lines, like against the Turks. And once they were able to get like let's say 10 men across, the hussars came in and just charged, whoom, like
Oh my
and
gosh.
right through the Ottoman siege, and they saved Vienna. So I admire
Wow.
the hussars, and my wife's grandfather made a portrait of me as a hussar, which I found very touching.
That's very cool.
And
That's
I was
cool.
like, I used to call myself the crypto hussar because I used to talk about crypto a lot, but TikTok just kind of like, really put the clamps on crypto, and it got such a dirty name. Like I liked informing people. I never did financial advice, but I like to talk about it and like the
Yeah.
technology behind it. But I ended up ditching the name, and I switched to Geo Hussar. But I will always do Hussar names because I admire the Hussars. So that's how I got my name.
Thanks for the history lesson. I knew nothing about them. So cool.
Yeah, the Hussars were cool. Where are you a professor of, by the way? Where?
Washington State University.
That's so cool. Washington
Go
State.
Cougs.
That's awesome. Washington State. Good. Okay, this was, and I'm sorry. I don't divulge much private information because I get death threats sometimes.
Oh my gosh. Really?
Yeah,
I have I mean, you get harassers. It's tough because I'm a public, I'm at a university, my name's
yeah,
public, so
yeah.
it's tough. I'm at a public university, so they can even look at my salary if they want to. But it's yeah, luckily I've been okay. I haven't had
Well,
any death
because you
threats.
are very polite. You don't say anything offensive, like
I try.
like yeah. I because
I did call a guy a chuckle fuck today. But
good for
I
you. They
had
probably
it's the
deserved it.
first time I've said that in a video ever, so I think I can be forgiven.
Yes.
The guy's pretty terrible.
Well,
So
I gotta find that video. I'm sorry, I didn't see your
no,
most
it's the one that
recent
just
post.
came out today, so don't worry about
Okay,
it.
I'll check it out. Like I get like I got death threats for just saying that the BRICS currency doesn't exist, that the BRICS nations aren't going to like
Wow.
destroy the economy or
Yeah. No, maybe it
well,
just has to more with I haven't gone big enough. I get that's just a sign. 'Cause I think every
no,
famous
no,
person gets death threats. Yeah.
no, I'm not one, I'm not famous. I think you're just more respectful and like because like you're very respectful. Or you don't launch personal attacks against people. Like there's this guy Clayton Morris who's got like over 1 million followers, and he's this like he's the guy who spread the lie that Russia destroyed a NATO base and
Uh,
killed 200 NATO generals. So I
yeah.
deep dived him. And I
Oh
was
my
like, guys,
gosh.
this is not true. He's full of it. He's misleading. He used to be a Fox commentator, and then he had to flee the country in America. He had to flee because of all these BS real estate scams.
This is the guy who went to Portugal.
Yes,
No, oh, I saw your video. Yeah, I saw your video about him. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
because of
yeah,
real
yeah, yeah.
estate fraud. It's like you can't trust him. So that's where I
Yeah.
got a lot of threats.
Really?
Yeah,
Really? Because of that
yes,
video.
yeah. So I think
Oh.
as long as if you want to keep doing what you're doing, I think you're safe. But if you do start calling out people for like being frauds,
Yeah.
you
Especially famous people. If you call out famous people for being grifters, yeah, there's this whole grifter ecosystem, and I hate it because I
yeah,
value truth and honesty a lot. Like
same.
I have lots of socialists I'm friends with. I have lots of libertarians I'm friends with and I
Yes,
interact with who I respect
yeah,
and sometimes very strongly disagree with
yes,
or whatnot. But I just being genuine is just an incredibly important value for me.
yeah.
And when there's a grifter, someone who's taking advantage of people's fears, I
Oh,
hate it. I think it's one of the most evil things people can
yes,
do.
yes. You know how many? I have probably over 1,000 of my followers have told me that because of people saying the dollar was going to go to zero. This is like 6 months ago. They emptied their bank account and bought Bitcoin.
No way.
Almost
Oh
like
my
I
gosh.
got flooded with so many people like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. It was when I
Yeah.
just started, and that's when I started going like, hey, the dollar's not going to zero. That's when I started making posts against BRICS about just the
Yeah.
overall health of our economy
Yeah. Yeah.
because I
Wow.
was so mad. I had to take down a couple posts because I was like, these freaking crooks should set up. We should sue them. Like I was like shaking because so many people were getting defrauded. You know,
Yeah.
I got emotional about it, man. I even spoke to lawyers and I was like, could I start a class action suit? And they were like, you could only start a class action suit if you lost money
Yeah.
listening to what they said. And I was like, ah. And I even made a post saying it. And then I showed my lawyer friends, they were like, you should take down that post. They were like,
What the
you
lawyer's friend? I know we gotta go, but why did the lawyer friend say that?
because I was giving free legal advice.
Oh, I see. I see.
And
Okay. All right.
so I'm like,
Well, you
yeah.
gotta go. I gotta go. This
Chris,
was
it
a lot
was
of fun.
such a great talk. This was great. Hopefully,
This is super fun.
like, yeah, I would love to talk to you again. So, like, let's like down the line. Well, let's definitely
Yeah.
reconvene. I look forward to learning from you, and I'm gonna freaking get like volume. I'll get Das Kapital. I'll get the volumes. I'll get it again. Just it'll
So if
probably
you
take
want to
me
read
like a
another
page a
book,
day.
the one I liked, and it's a bit older now, and
Yeah,
he's writing it in the early 2000s. So there's this bit of this end of history, fall of the USSR kind of thing. But Megnan Desai's book, Marx's Revenge, I think it gives
Marx's
one of the
Revenge.
most simple. Again, it's a bit old, but I think most of it still holds up. I still assign it to my students. Um, but he's a Marxist economist who is capitalist friendly, as we would say. But
Perfect.
he was at London School of Economics, and I think it's a very sympathetic uh, discussion of Marx. And well, it's a heck of a lot shorter and a whole lot easier to understand
All
than the
right.
original.
Well, what, I'll have Das Kapital just to reference it. Like
Very good.
I'm
All
even
right.
because I'm reading a biography on Mao Zedong, and I
Oh,
was thinking
interesting.
of getting like the just Das Kapital again, just to try to find anything that's mentioned in the biography, so I could find the passages that he may refer to. You
Oh,
know.
interesting. All right.
All right.
Well, we'll
Take
see you
care.
later.
See you later. This is
Have a
great.
good
Thank you
one.
so much.
This
You
was
too.